The first thing is about the Iran war. Rubin tried to support his central claim that wokeism did more damage to America than Trump ever did. And he did this by justifying Trump's war in Iran. Let's take a listen. Well, Will Chamberlain, I mean, you've tried to defend the indefensible war in Iran on my show several times. So present a better case for why it's been such a thumping triumph, given last time I checked, the slain Ayatollah has been replaced by his more radical son. The IRGC remains firmly in control of the country. There's been no popular uprising. The Strait of Hormuz remains completely in the control of the Iranians. And every time anyone tries to threaten them, they fire off rockets at their Gulf state neighbours, causing untold havoc whilst holding the entire world to an economic barrel. I mean, where's the big win, Will?
If you thought Dave Rubin had a rough time defending the Iran narrative, wait until you see what happens here. Before we get into the full story, drop a comment letting us know where you're watching from. And make sure you like and subscribe so you never miss what's coming next. Will Chamberlain walked onto Piers Morgan's show looking confident, seemingly convinced he could handle the same arguments that tripped up Rubin. But as the debate unfolds, that confidence gets put to the test in a big way. Let's watch the clip, and then we'll break down exactly what went wrong.
No, I don't think we're winning the ceasefire at this point. I think that President Trump needs to stop dithering and escalate. And so I think that at this point you have to look and say that the ceasefire hasn't been working. It's weakening our alliances with Israel. We're creating tension there. We're creating tension with the Gulf allies, I think, and we're not achieving anything meaningful with the ceasefire. So I think it's time to escalate. But I want to answer the sort of 2 points you highlighted from that clip that seems sort of, I think, kind of bizarre and poorly founded. One argument was apparently that because 200 children died, that therefore the war is a disaster. Well, then, if that's the metric we're using, why is it not a disaster that we didn't intervene and save the 40,000 people that were murdered by the Iranians prior to the war? And then,
so wait, can I respond to that? Can I respond to that directly?
Sure.
Why would it not, if civilian death is disastrous as it relates to the Islamic Republic of Iran killing their own people, why would it not be disastrous for the United States to also kill Iranian civilians? If you acknowledge that civilian deaths,
well, then because we would theoretically be saving more, because the collateral damage would be less than the number of people we'd be saving from being murdered by their own regime. Obviously.
Except our military intervention has killed 1,700 Iranian civilians. We haven't saved anyone.
Oh, so we're only 5% of the way there in the same time period.
So your standard is as long as we kill under the amount that the Iranian government has killed of their own people.
I didn't say that.
We must.
I think 5% is a pretty dramatic reduction, don't you think? It's dramatically less, right? And that's also not counting over time the 1,000 Americans that have died at the hands of the Iranian regime over the last 30 years.
So why exactly is that a standard, right? If we acknowledge that civilian deaths,
well, no, this is your standard. You're the one who said it was a disaster because 200 civilians died.
Yes, civilians that otherwise would have been alive.
Okay, so 40,000 civilians died in the interim. Why was it not a disaster that we let that happen?
It was a disaster we can say that was it was a disaster that happened, but there's no evidence that there's no evidence that our military intervention could have actually saved those people, because considering the fact we've now engaged militarily with Iran, we've engaged
we just have to let the Iranians murder everybody they want.
Well, putting aside, all right, hang on one second. Hang on one second. Will, when you last appeared on my show several weeks ago, you insisted the United States controls the Strait of Hormuz, which led to some ridicule heading back your way. Do you still believe America controls the Strait of Hormuz?
I think that control is contested. I think that's the best way to frame it. They can't get their ships out. We can't get our ships out.
Come on, Will. It's not.
Well, then why can't Iran get its ships out?
The Iranians are letting out ships. Why can't it get its ships out?
Will, are you saying that a U.S. Tomahawk missile striking an elementary school in Manab, Iran was not a disaster? Yes or no?
I mean, I'm saying it's a mistake and a tragedy.
So it was is it disaster?
That doesn't mean the entire world
collateral damage.
Is it not a disaster to you?
You're even calling it a disaster.
Obviously it's a tragedy that civilians died, right? Like the United States does everything in its power to avoid needless civilians.
Hang on, don't talk over each other, otherwise, unfortunately, we can't hear you. I mean, I do want to play a clip, Evan. This is where you highlighted Dave Rubin's lack of understanding about enriched uranium. Let's take a listen to some of this. Most people were shaking their heads at that point. Will, I will bring the others in. Don't worry.
So I think the central point that I made to Dave in that debate after I brought up the Iranian school children is that even if we just acknowledge, okay, civilian deaths happen in war, that's why war has to be a last resort. And if this war is about Iran obtaining a nuclear weapon, what preceded Iran getting to 60% enriched uranium? It was Donald Trump unilaterally withdrawing from the Iran nuclear deal
You have a
in
time
2018.
machine?
Iran did
Have you
Iran
invented a
did
time
not
machine?
enrich. Excuse me. Iran did not enrich
Have
past
you
the
invented a time machine?
3.67%
Yes or no?
agreed upon in the JCPOA. I'll finish my point and then you can speak. Iran did not enrich past the 3.67% agreed upon in the JCPOA until Donald Trump unilaterally withdrew from that deal. Iran is closer today. In fact, the IAEA actually came out just today on June 3rd, that Iran is actually more likely to pursue nuclear weapons. You've actually made the case for the Iranian hardliners that you can't negotiate with the Americans because if you come to a deal with the Americans, they'll just unilaterally withdraw from the deal. And if they attempt to negotiate again with the Americans, like they did in either the 12-day war or now, they'll just use negotiations as a ruse and attack you during negotiations. Iran is actually at a stronger negotiating point with their leverage when it comes to the Strait of Hormuz. And there's a reason why they are threatening to withdraw from negotiations. They have the leverage in the situation. There's no indication that we militarily have weakened their negotiating leverage point.
Okay, do you have a time machine?
No.
Right. Okay, so why is a terminated 10-year-old deal relevant to the decision to go to war in 2026?
Because
God.
Donald
Who
Trump
terminated?
uses. So I'll explain. I'll explain your question. You asked a question. I'll explain. Because the administration uses the fact that Iran was enriching past the need for civilian use and up to 60% as one of the reasons cited as to indicate that they were pursuing a nuclear weapon. But they did not do that before Donald Trump unilaterally pulled out of that decision. So
Yeah,
Donald
but they are
Trump's
doing it now,
unilateral
so
decision.
should we just ignore
Yeah,
it?
Okay, but
because of
my
Donald Trump's
question, all right,
unilateral
my
decision to
question,
pull out of that deal.
my
That's irrelevant.
question, my
It's just
question,
being-
Will, would be this.
It's obviously irrelevant
Will,
because
do you
it doesn't
accept?
bear on the decision.
Will,
we
do you
have now.
accept if the Iranians do not hand over the enriched uranium, and it's not seized by American or Israeli forces, and therefore remains in Iranian possession, that if the goal was to stop their nuclear ambitions, then the goal has failed? Do you accept that?
I think that basically that means that we have only partially succeeded in the goal because we have still set back their program with overall, the overall effort, but we certainly haven't fully achieved it. And I think that's a pretty unsatisfying outcome.
Okay, let's go to the second.
I'm still having trouble understanding which story Will is adopting because I've heard from so many different officials in the Trump administration. I mean, no longer Tulsi Gabbard saying that Iran was not pursuing a nuclear weapon. Marco Rubio
In
saying
that
the
very
war in Iran
testimony,
is
she says that
over.
they have an enriched uranium
Other
stockpile,
Trump officials saying
unprecedented
we were
for a
never
state
in a
without
war to
nuclear
begin with.
weapons.
This was a small military operation. Trump saying that we depleted their ability to build a nuclear weapon last year, and now saying that we have to increase the conflict to prevent them from getting a nuclear weapon. I just don't really know which story to buy when I'm hearing so many contradicting narratives from every member of the Trump administration. So which one do you adopt?
They're perfectly reconcilable. I mean, it just seems like you haven't
They
really
all
been
go
paying very
together.
much attention.
So we both depleted their ability to build a nuclear weapon last year with Operation Warhammer, and now we have to do
we severely
Operation
degraded
Epic
it.
Fury to stop them from building a nuclear weapon again.
To prevent them from reconstituting their program, yes.
Donald Trump said that we destroyed their ability to last year.
So-
Were they already rebuilding?
Yeah, they were set back
they
years.
in the weaponization
They wasn't
process?
permanently eliminated, but they were set back years, yes.
So where is your
How can they
evidence
back
that
years?
shows that we are entering into a new weaponization process?
There isn't, they're not going to do the weaponization until they're at a point where they would be in a position to immediately break out and do it. That's why you don't let people get to 60% enriched uranium. That's why literally the IAEA was
Tulsi
freaking
Gabbard was
out in
lying
their
with
most
the
recent
fighter in front of
report.
Congress.
Like,
All right,
should we
look,
wait
I
until
want
we have a
interesting,
nuclear
Will,
bomb
interesting,
in
Will, you
Washington,
don't-
D.C.,
Okay,
and then hundreds
let
of
me
thousands
just-
of Americans could die? This is why your guys' position is so obviously facile. And, why 25-year-olds in Los Angeles shouldn't be setting foreign policy for the United States of America. Like, obviously,
Tulsi
you
Gabbard.
shouldn't just
Actually,
let
you know what? I would
Hold
actually
on,
quite.
Will,
I got to
Will,
say,
Will, Will.
hang on. Hang on.
We're leaving.
Hang
There's
on.
some-
I've got to say, I would quite like a bunch of 25-year-olds to be running this Iran foreign policy right now. It would probably make more
Well, sorry,
sense.
you guys lost the war of
More
1812,
sense
so
than
you guys
the
don't get to do that.
utterly confusing quagmire that we're now being dragged into with goalposts changing every 3 minutes. I want to move to.
I'm going to leave the full interview linked below because it's definitely worth watching in its entirety. But as for Will Chamberlain's performance here, I'll give him this much. He did manage to clear the incredibly low bar that Dave Rubin left behind. The problem is that clearing the bar isn't the same thing as winning the argument. Throughout this exchange, Chamberlain ended up conceding key points, backing away from earlier claims, acknowledging that the broader objectives hadn't been fully achieved, and then becoming visibly frustrated when the questioning got tougher. That's not exactly the dominant performance many of his supporters were hoping for. And here's where the bigger issue comes in. The argument surrounding Iran keeps running into the same fundamental problem. Critics point out that when the United States withdrew from the nuclear agreement in 2018, it changed the entire trajectory of the situation. The debate isn't just about where Iran ended up, it's about how it got there in the first place. That's why the young Democrats on this panel kept returning to the same point. If Iran was operating under the limits of the agreement before the withdrawal, then it's fair to ask whether abandoning that framework helped create the very conditions that later became the justification for a more aggressive approach. Whether you agree with that argument or not, it's a question that supporters of the policy still struggle to answer convincingly. By the end of this discussion, Chamberlain may have performed better than Rubin, but that's not saying much. The real story is that when the conversation moved beyond talking points and into the details, the cracks started to show. Check out the full exchange in the description below. Let me know what you think, and I'll see you in the next one.